Good morning, everybody. My name is Al. Thank you so much, Danae, for that kind and generous introduction. I truly am honored to be here. I feel the spirit and connectedness of your group very strongly as I've been here in the hotel in the past 24 hours. And I'm really happy that Danae tracked me down. I don't remember how she did, but she did. And I'm glad that she did. I'm going to be sharing with you some lessons I've learned in the world of rare disease over the past 25 plus years. I am here for two reasons. I am both a rare disease dad and I'm a practicing psychologist. And from both of those experiences and from many, many people around the world affected by rare disease, I have learned a great deal. I am a psychologist, so I usually spend my days doing much more listening and very little talking. So it's not my natural state to be up here talking. So thank you for bearing with me, and I hope and trust that what I have to offer you today is of value to you and to your families. I'm going to be taking you on a journey today, both personal and professional. Personally, my son Jack is photographed on the left. Jack was born in 1995 in Madison, Wisconsin, a healthy 8.5-pound baby. And at the age of 6 months, at his pediatrician appointment, we were told that Jack wasn't sitting up, wasn't rolling over like normal 6-month-olds do. And in the span of 4 days, we learned that he had an untreatable condition called spinal muscular atrophy, and Jack was given 1 year to live in 1995. Thankfully, Jack didn't fully cooperate with his prognosis, and he lived for 26 years up until October 2021. And I feel very, very lucky to be his dad and to have been his dad and to have him with us for so very long. He taught me a great deal. So what I'm about to share with you, the lessons that I've learned along the way come from Professor Jack. I did learn some things that were useful when I got a PhD in counseling psychology, but most of what I have to say and the reason I feel credible being here with you is because of my son, Professor Jack. And the journey that I've been on personally really has been a journey from a place of fear upon that day in 1995 when we learned about spinal muscular atrophy to a place of hope and to a place of love. So that's the journey that I've been on, and that's the journey that I observe and guide with the clients and the groups that I work with all around the country and all around the world. I'm privileged to have not only therapy sessions with other families like ours, but I facilitate support groups online all over the world with different rare disease advocacy groups and consult with leaders like Danae and others around the world who are doing the best to support families like yours and mine. So I consider it a great privilege to be here and a great privilege to share what I've learned. I'm going to go through about 10 lessons here. I'm going to try to move through them efficiently and quickly. And the first lesson that I want to share with you along the way in my journey, lesson number 1, is that the diagnosis of a rare disease can be a trauma. For me, I'll never forget the sights and the sounds of that hospital room when our baby was diagnosed and we were told of SMA. I remember everything that was said. I remember what it smelled like, what it sounded like, what it looked like. That is a day that is kind of burned into my soul. And when I work with other families who receive a diagnosis, that day when our lives change, is that for me, the day before that was one part of my life, and the day after that, another part of my life. It's a very disorienting experience to find out that you or a family member has a rare disease. I felt like I was launched into the twilight zone, a place that was very isolating and a place that nobody else could possibly understand. I felt very much alone. And when I work with families like ours who experience a diagnosis, whether it's a 4-day period of time, like it was for me, or years, some families experience trauma because of a search for a diagnosis that's hard to find over a period of years. It can be very traumatic. One of the most common questions I receive as a psychologist is, Dr. Al, is this normal? Is it normal, Dr. Al, that I can't sleep at night, or I'm crying all the time, or I'm afraid that something else bad could happen to me or my family? Is it normal? And the answer to that question is almost always yes. It's a normal reaction to a very unusual set of stressors. You're not crazy, the situation is crazy. It's something that most people can't comprehend. So that experience of trauma and these types of unusual symptoms are very common. For me, I was driving 40 miles an hour on the turnpike very slowly, assuming that if something this bad could happen to my baby, that I could get in a car accident. I was afraid to light the fireplace in the house that Jack's mom and I were living in because I was sure that the house would burn down. If something this bad could happen to our baby, then maybe something else could happen. My mind played tricks on me, and that's not unusual. So is this normal, Dr. Al? The answer is almost always yes. Don't have many photographs of that time when my baby was diagnosed. It wasn't a happy time, but this one I did find in a pile of old prints, and a much younger version of me, but a very exhausted, physically and emotionally exhausted version of me a couple of weeks after we learned that Jack had SMA. And as you can see on his face, that smile, which he carried with him for 26 years, he kind of taught me how to move from that place of trauma. This is the one lesson that is universal, this experience of uncertainty. It's a hard way to live, and for 26 years I lived with that kind of uncertainty about how long my son would live. There are different types of uncertainty that we live with in rare disease. There's the existential level. Upon diagnosis, once we get our feet under us, we ask ourselves, where is my place in the world? What will my life become? What will the future hold? How do I fit into the world? And how will the world accommodate me and my family? There's the big picture level of uncertainty that we all grapple with. And then there's the day-to-day uncertainty of, will this symptom that I see or experience or feel turn into something significant, something disruptive, something life-threatening, or will it be nothing? For me, it was that kind of thing. If Jack got a cold, will it turn into another week in the hospital or a month in the hospital or not? Will the nurse come for the night shift, or am I going to be up all night with Jack because she can't make it? Is the ventilator charged up, and is the wheelchair working properly so that he can drive independently? These were all the day-to-day types of uncertainty that I live with. Uncertainty is a common experience among our families. This is Jack's first birthday, and we thought it would be the only birthday party to have because we took the doctors very literally. They were the experts, and we didn't know anything about SMA. And we experienced a lot of uncertainty with how to have a happy birthday party when Jack was 1. But I'm really glad we did. And then he had a second, a third, and a fourth. And we got the hang of it. This is the pediatric intensive care unit at Jack's Children's Hospital, Nemours Children's Hospital in Delaware. That's Nurse Chuck. Jack had a number of hospitalizations, 15 or 20, 300 nights over 20-some years, and we had wonderful care. But every time we went into the hospital, we didn't know if Jack would be able to come home. It's hard to live with uncertainty. Lesson number 3. Where do we find hope? I love that t-shirt, by the way. Hope connects us. There are 2 words on that shirt, or 3. All 3 of those words are words that I'm going to be talking about today. Hope connects us. Where do you find hope when you're not given much hope? We weren't given much hope. Where do we turn for hope? For me, and for most families that I know around the world, we turn to each other. It's really good that you're here together. It's really wonderful that you're connected and here together as a community. Because when you're by yourself in that twilight zone, floating around not knowing how to get yourself oriented to the new world you've been launched into, the people you find hope from are the people who've been in the twilight zone too, and have learned how to navigate the twilight zone, and know what to do, and know what steps to take, and know what to look forward to, and know that hope is possible. For me, a woman named June Price in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, she was the first person that gave me a whole lot of hope. I received a newsletter in the mail a couple weeks after Jack's diagnosis, and there was a letter written by this woman, and she said, "Dear parents, I know that the diagnosis of SMA is a very devastating diagnosis. It was for my parents too. And my parents were told when I was a baby I'd only live to 2, and when I was 2, they said I'd live to 4, and when I was 4, they said I'd live to 8. That's what the doctors told my parents. Well, I'm 48 years old, and I have an apartment, I have a job, I have a rich life, I have a partner. I'm happy, and my dad's been gone for 20 years. He sat around waiting for me to die. Don't do that. Live every day as though your child is going to live. June gave me so much hope, and we took Jack to meet her in person at her apartment in Milwaukee. It was a long day. We pulled out the camera at the very end of the day. It's the only photograph we have, not a good one of Jack. He just wanted to get back home after that trip. But her inspiration was so helpful to me. She gave me hope. Early on, these days, Dr. Al, everybody calls Dr. Al for guidance and support. Dr. Al called June Price for guidance and support. She was my rock in the early years and helped me to know how to handle all the challenges that came our way. Lesson number 3, hope breeds hope. In order to be hopeful, we need to spend time with other people who are. And I feel a lot of that in the room here today. The 4th lesson I've learned along the way is that family matters. Everything begins and ends with our families. A rare disease is challenging, so we need to enlist our family members, both our close family members and our extended family members, to support us. It takes an adjustment on everybody's part to accommodate the news of a rare disease and the challenges that come from a rare disease. Sometimes we have to teach our family members how to help us because they don't know what to do and they don't know what to say. A social worker told me that upon Jack's diagnosis, that people, if they don't know what to do, they might not do anything, even your own cousins or uncles or aunts. So we have to give instructions sometimes to bring people along and help them to learn how to help us. In my case, I've been very lucky. This is a photograph of my father's side of the family, and everybody in our family has been so supportive. By the way, I have a daughter too. Her name is Kara. She's kneeling down there next to Jack. Kara was adopted from Korea when she was an infant and Jack was 5 years old. She's now 24. She's all grown up. She finished college and she's working full-time at NORD, the National Organization of Rare Disorders, in the research department. I'm very proud of her because I thought she'd run as far away from rare disease as she could after growing up in the middle of all the medical craziness, but she's taken a step in. Behind Jack is my brother, David, and on the left are my parents. My mom passed away a couple of years ago. My dad will be 95 next month, and my cousins and my uncle, who lived to near 100 and since has passed away. This photograph was taken about 5 years ago. But as you can see, Jack's at the center of this photograph, both literally and it's a symbol of everybody's support of our son when we're dealing with such an unusual situation. Lesson number 4, family matters. Lesson number 5, and this is a very important lesson. Community strengthens and supports. That's what you're all doing here. There are many different types of communities. We have our school communities, our work communities, our faith communities, our neighborhood communities, and our rare disease communities. And what I've learned in my 25 years is that there is strength in numbers. We need to be part of a community in order to be able to give support and in order to be able to receive support. There's nothing more important than the support from each other. It's also important with our communities at home to learn how to accept help if we need it. It's hard to do that for some of us. We want to take care of ourselves, we want to take care of our kids, we want to take care of our families by ourselves independently and be the independent people we were raised to be. But when we're up against it with rare disease, it's important that we accept help, and people want to help us, they just don't know how. So when we allow our communities to help us, it goes a long way. Our rare disease communities are very special, and I feel that community here in the hotel, and I'm glad that you all attended. I have a couple of photographs of two different types of communities. This first one is years and years ago. This is a school community where I worked as a teacher and a psychologist. It's a bunch of high school kids at the school where I worked many years ago who really befriended Jack when he was very little, and they raised money. This was a boarding school in Pennsylvania, a Quaker boarding school, and the kids raised money by selling the stuff they didn't want anymore when they were getting ready to move out of their dorms and go home. And they set up tables and raised money and sent it for research to our group called Cure SMA. That's a symbol of a school community, a neighborhood community for us, who surrounded Jack with love and who valued him and who made him feel special and made him feel part of the group in a very important way. This community is my version of all of you. This is our Cure SMA conference, and Cure SMA is our spinal muscular atrophy advocacy group. And I'm privileged to have been a facilitator of our support groups for over 20 years now. And this is a group called our Talk It Out group for children. We have groups for young children, for teenagers, young adults, and many, many workshops I facilitated over the years. These children are beautiful and they're smart, just as yours are, and they value so much the connectedness that they feel from the community. You'll see the volunteers in the back, my daughter in the orange shirt standing next to me, and in the left corner is my beautiful fiancée, Patty. I want to mention her because she's sitting right here. We're traveling together. Patty and I met at this conference 6 years ago, and Patty has volunteered in our child care room for 32 years, I think since high school. So we're going to be visiting your child care room. You have a pro here to help advise you on how you do your child care. But these kids feel that sense of community just as their parents do. I co-facilitate this group with Angela, who's hiding in her wheelchair in the back right corner, a gifted fourth grade teacher in Houston, and we have a great time with the kids, and they have the opportunity to be together and talk about the experience of this rare disease without their parents in the room. They often ask, Dr. Al, how can we get our parents to stop worrying about us so much? They give us advice. They give each other advice, the girls do, about the middle school dances. They give each other advice about how to handle awkward situations when adults talk over their heads, assuming they have some kind of cognitive problem when they only have a physical problem. So community is critical. Community strengthens and supports. That's lesson number 5. Lesson number 6. When we have a rare disease, whether we want to or not, we need to interact with the healthcare system. And it's not always easy to do that. Actually, in terms of mental health and stresses on people with rare disease, one of the things I hear about most commonly in my work is the stress of interacting with the healthcare system. It's not easy to do even when you don't have a rare disease. It's nearly impossible to do for some people who have a rare disease. But what I've learned with lesson number 6 is that there are many good people within this challenging system we have in our country who choose to get involved and to help us. We don't choose rare disease, and we can't do this alone. We need to have other people who make the choice to get involved to help us, and we're lucky when they do. I've gotten to know many doctors and nurses along the way because of my son and because of so many other pieces of work that I do around the country. And doctors and nurses are people too. They're working under difficult conditions. They're working hard. They're committed to us and our families. And many take a genuine interest in helping us in very important ways. And from looking at your program, you have those doctors here too who care about you and your family so much that they're taking their time to be here on the weekend to offer their time and their expertise to all of you about HCU. A symbol of the good doctors and nurses, Dr. John Bransema. He's in Philadelphia at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Dr. Bransema was my son's neurologist. This is a Sunday afternoon, a fundraiser we called Walk and Roll, and Dr. Bransema on his own time came to be with our families and to spend time with Jack. A really wonderful person who was an important part of Jack's life all the way up to his passing. A good guy. Off to lesson number 7. Friends make a huge difference to all of us. but it's especially true when we have a rare disease. Who do you count on? Who do I count on? Who helps us feel included rather than excluded? Who do we turn to when the chips are down and we need support? We turn to our friends. And when you have a rare disease and you have a disability and you are different in some way in terms of how you look or how you act or how you need to live your life, it gets more complicated for people with rare disease. This is something that people with rare disease struggle with mightily in the therapy sessions that I conduct. It's hard to have friends, and for some, and those friends are worth their weight in gold when they stick with you, and they make a huge difference and give us fuel in our emotional fuel tanks. The most important thing we can all have in terms of our mental health is connectedness, and friends give us connectedness. Family give us connectedness. Community provides us connectedness. This is a symbol of friendship for my son along the way. I think this is the last group photograph they take. It was 8th grade. They don't do this in high school, but this is another symbol of Jack being surrounded by friends who cared about him, who included him. He was able to learn in school like the other kids. He couldn't attend school till 4th grade because of his medical vulnerability. The doctors didn't want him to go until 4th or 5th grade until the other kids could cover their mouth when they had a cold. But once he got to school, he thrived. He had friends, and they cared about him. And they also grew up with him so that when he did get to high school, the kids that didn't know him made it cool to be with Jack. They taught the other kids that it was okay to hang out with the kid with a wheelchair. This is very important when the kids are young to have friends who grow up with them. When Jack got to high school, these girls grew up with him, and the girl on the left, Jane, asked Jack to be her prom date. So this is the senior prom when Jack was a senior in high school, and he was so happy to be included, so happy to be invited, and he couldn't stay up late as the other kids did. He couldn't do everything the same way the other kids did, but the friendship meant so much to him, and his being included meant so much to him. And he also taught his friends a whole lot about some very important things in life, and to this day I hear from their parents about the impact Jack had on their kids' lives growing up. Lesson number 7, friends make a big difference. Lesson number 8, mental health is important too. I'm a psychologist, so I need to make sure to include mental health today. It's very common in rare disease that the attention to mental health lags behind the attention to physical health and medical needs, and that's for obvious and understandable reasons. The pandemic shined a light on mental health for the whole world, and that light spread to rare disease, so there's been an increased recognition that we need to pay attention to our emotional and mental health along with our physical and medical needs. Rare disease is stressful, so you don't need a PhD in psychology to know that, and it's really important that we all recognize the importance of taking care of ourselves, both physically and emotionally. Now, I'm a psychologist, and I can tell you that for 26 years, I didn't have time to talk about how I felt about all this stuff. I was busy making sure the ventilator was charged up and the nurse was going to show up and the van worked and the lift worked and that we could get to the doctor appointments and we could keep Jack safe. I was just trying to survive and help my boy survive. I didn't have time to talk about this stuff, and I'm a psychologist. So it's not unusual for us to not pay attention to our non-medical needs because they have to take precedence, and it makes sense that they do. There are many types of support available. There's individual support, there's group support. I'm a big proponent now that I'm facilitating support groups with rare disease families and patients around the world. The power of the group is really, really important and helps that community and that connectedness, that common ground really helps. I encourage you to participate in any opportunities you can to take care of yourselves by talking with each other. This is another photograph or it was another photograph, there it is, of the kids at our Talk It Out group at our Cure SMA conference. everybody needs a voice. And these kids live in unusual situations with their wheelchairs and the medical needs they have. They're usually the only kid in their town that has this problem. And then they get together and they're with others who can share that experience and know they're not alone. Mental health is important too. Lesson number 8. Lesson number 9. Anything is possible. This is an important lesson. When we have a rare disease, when we have a complicated medical condition, we hear initially, and we hear mostly about the things that we can't do. We hear about the problems we're going to have. We hear about the limitations we're going to have. We were told our son would not be able to walk, wouldn't be able to swallow food, wouldn't be able to go to school, wouldn't be able to do a lot of things, and wouldn't be able to live a full life. You are all told of the problems and challenges that you're going to have with your medical needs. So the focus is often on what is impossible when we start out this journey. And I learned that it's important to turn our attention to what is possible. We now, in our community of SMA, we now have 3 FDA-approved treatments. And we're very proud of the progress that's been made. Our group was about this size 20 years ago. We just had our conference 2 weeks ago in Texas, in Austin. 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had 2,300 people between families, industry partners, doctors, and researchers. Huge, huge, huge crowd, and 3 approved treatments. So I have seen, I call it, we've gone from the Flintstones to the Jetsons of rare disease. You know, I'm from the Flintstones era of our disease, and the treatment that's happening now, it's the Jetsons. The Jetsons are here, and marvelous things are happening. This is a photograph of one of the wonderful scientists who work with mice and fish, who I met all those years ago when Jack was first diagnosed, Dr. Arthur Burgess. He's at The Ohio State University. He's responsible for the foundational research that led to treatments for my son's condition. When I first met him, I was a scared dad. I was terrified. At my first conference, he sat down and befriended me and had a beer with me, and I didn't know that he was a famous guy. And we're friends to this day. And the reason I have my Philadelphia Eagles jersey on there is that our conference was in Dallas that year. And as a Philadelphia Eagles season ticket holder, it was my obligation to wear a different Eagles jersey in Dallas for 4 days in a row. So I did my civic duty. Dr. Burgess is a symbol of that scientific progress that brings us hope. We have an icebreaker at the beginning of our conference where the kids who have wheelchairs race against the researchers and the doctors who use a manual wheelchair. And for years and years, the children always win the race. No researcher or doctor has ever won one of those wheelchair races. I'm sharing this photograph with you because last year, for the first time, one of our children went in the wheelchair race without a wheelchair because she received the treatment that helps her to walk. She's not walking 100% perfectly. She's got the braces on her ankles, but she is walking. So with scientific progress brings a whole lot of hope to rare disease communities, and more are coming along. And a final symbol of this hope is a family that we know, friends in the Philadelphia area. That's my hometown, and as you know from my Eagles jersey. But Shane, little Shane there, was lucky enough to be born in the generation, the Jetsons generation, and to receive treatment. So his journey is going to be different than Jack's. But this, I share this photograph as a symbol of our family sticking together. The hard work that we did those years ago has led to this progress and has benefited the next generation of kids. And the hard work that I just heard Danae talk about just before I got up here is leading to and will continue to lead to benefits for the next generation of families who face the challenges that you do. Scientific progress brings new hope and new challenges. I have one more lesson for you to finish up here, and this is a lesson that I didn't really consider, especially early on when my son was diagnosed. There was nothing at all positive about it. It was all a traumatic, scary, fearful experience to have a son with this type of problem. But over the years, as I became accustomed to, got my feet under me, got oriented, and watched my son make his way in the world, I realized, and in the past 5 years, I started to feel it and articulate it more, that a rare disease may also bring with it some very rare gifts. And that might sound unusual to you. It certainly would have sounded unusual to me some years ago. But my son taught me that with the unusual situation comes some rare gifts. And my son shared so many of these gifts with others who reflected those gifts back to him. I'm going to share a few of those with you now. And these gifts are gifts that I'm resonating with as I work with rare disease patients and families like yours all over the country and all over the world. The first is the gift of perspective. How many people do you know who can enter a room and without saying a word, everybody else's big problems get small really, really fast? The gift of perspective. We who are affected by rare disease know the difference between a big deal problem and a small deal problem. We who have rare disease in our family appreciate every single day of stability, of normalcy, of a routine. We don't take things for granted. We have things in perspective. I don't think I would have things in perspective the same way I do without the 26 years I've had with my son and without the experience I've had with people like you day after day in my work. Rare gift of perspective. This is the day of high school graduation. It was in a large arena, the University of Delaware, a large high school class. You can see the other graduates looking a little washed out from probably the party they had the night before, and Jack driving his chair in the room with this glow on his face. And everybody in the arena, when they saw Jack drive in, had a different perspective on that day and what it meant to everybody. Jack had that ability, and we all have that ability when we have a problem like this to provide perspective to others and an appreciation for everything that happens. I was deeply appreciative that Jack could live long enough to see a high school graduation. It was not anything that I thought could be possible early on. A second gift that comes with rare disease in my experience is the gift of resilience. As people affected by rare disease, we are knocked down over and over again, and we get ourselves back up. We face a lot of adversity, and we push back, and that adversity builds strength. It builds resilience. Resilience comes in handy in our lives, and it's a very important quality to have. This photograph was taken when my boy came back from an early hospitalization. His little wheelchair was brand new. He might have been not even 3 years old, and he was just learning to drive it. And I was worried that when he came home from the hospital in his weakened condition that he wouldn't be strong enough to drive his chair. So his mom and I got him into his chair, and he couldn't pick up blocks and knock them over, but he could run them over with his chair. And he was determined to get back to his routine, his playful routine as a little 3-year-old of knocking down his blocks. I was nervous. I set up the blocks. He knocked them down. I set him up again. He knocked them down again. And by the end of that day, after his discharge from the intensive care unit, he was fine. I was exhausted. He showed so much resilience in his life, and that's a symbol of his resilience. He must have knocked those blocks down 150 times in 2 or 3 hours that day. The gift of resilience. Rare disease brings with it another gift, which is creativity. We have to do things differently than everybody else. For 26 years, our family couldn't do anything the same way everybody else did. We had to think out of the box. We had to be creative. We had to adapt. We had to pioneer new ways of doing things. We had to stretch our thinking about how to solve a problem. How could Jack go to school when other kids could be sick? How could he get to the second floor classroom if the elevator's here and the classroom's there? How could he do his homework before the time the books were scanned in and he could do his eye gaze on the computer? over and over and over again, we are challenged to do things a different way. And it's often very stressful, but because we're challenged to do things a different way, we become very, very creative. That's a gift. A symbol of creativity, this is my son on a zip line at a special camp called the Pennsylvania Event Camp. This camp they just had the camp last week. I'm going to show you another picture of it in a minute. But this camp is for children who are ventilator dependent in Pennsylvania. And the only way they get on a zip line, and by the way, they have your parents. We sign forms, when you send your kid to camp, we give permission for you to do these activities with your kid. They don't tell you about the zip line and the rock climbing wall and until you see the pictures. But you have to be very creative. You have to be a bunch of very creative professionals to figure out a way to get a kid like this on a zip line with a ventilator hanging from the zip line. He loved it. But we have to think out of the box when we have rare disease, and we have to surround ourselves with people who think out of the box. This is an extraordinary camp with extraordinary kids doing extraordinary things because of the gift of creativity. Another rare gift that I've experienced and continue to is the gift of compassion. My son and so many other young people affected by rare disease and adults are magnets for open-hearted, compassionate people. They're drawn to our lives. I'm friends with so many very special, open-hearted, compassionate people who made the choice to get involved with my son. I chose to be a dad, not a dad of a kid with an incurable disease. But all these other people, doctors and nurses and wheelchair repair people and social workers and researchers and doctors, so many people were drawn into my son's life because they're open-hearted, compassionate people. My son was a gift for those people. And I'm sure in your lives, you are finding those open-hearted, compassionate people coming to you, which makes us all more compassionate as well. Yesterday, I'm going to move on to the next gift, which is connection. But yesterday, when Patty and I came through here, Patty commented to me, "Everybody's so nice." And so I said, "Patty, I go to these conferences quite often. I haven't met one person who's not nice. We're all nice to each other. We lift each other up." Compassion is all part of the deal. It needs to be with rare disease. This is Nurse Stacy, a symbol of that gift of compassion. Nurse Stacy is a home care nurse. She was Jack's night nurse for more than 9 years. 3 nights a week, 12 hours a night, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday one week, Tuesday, Friday, and Saturday the next week. She had a pattern. She never missed a shift. She brought that smile and she brought that compassion into the home. And because she was with Jack at night, I knew he was safe and I was able to sleep at night. When Thanksgiving came, the first year that she was Jack's night nurse, I said, "Hey, Stacy, it's Thursday, Thanksgiving in a couple of weeks. Are you planning to be here? Or are you planning to be with your family?" Which would have been perfectly reasonable. And Stacy said to me, I'll always remember, she said, "Well, Jack can't take a vacation from SMA, so I shouldn't take the vacation. I can't do that to him. I'm going to be here." For 9 years, whether it was Thanksgiving or Christmas or New Year's or any other day, if it fell on her Thursday and Friday and Tuesday, she was there. Rare disease draws in open-hearted, compassionate, amazing people who choose to get involved and help us. Connection. The gift of connection comes with rare disease. Rare disease communities like yours and mine build very strong bonds. Rare disease connects people and brings us together. We lift each other up. We don't put each other down. We draw each other in. We don't push anybody away. Everybody's nice. That gift of connection is a very important gift, and that gift gives us more strength and puts fuel in our emotional tanks. It's good for our mental health, and it puts fuel in our emotional fuel tanks that we need because we know we're going to expend emotional fuel dealing with the challenges and the adversity that we deal with every day with rare disease. Connection is hugely important. This is a group of kids, and there's Jack with the orange flag sticking out of his wheelchair. This is the Pennsylvania Event Camp, and this is a 4-day a year affair. And these kids look forward to going to this camp because of the connection and the bonds that they have together living in the woods with, each of them have a nurse and helpers and a doctor, and they do that zip line and the rock climbing wall and the food fights and the dance. They do it all at the camp, and they create a very, very, very strong connection. So strong, they look after each other. When Jack passed away, there were 4 of these kids at his memorial service, and they're texting me. These young people with ventilators texting me, "Mr. Freedman, are you okay? We're here for you if you want to talk." Jack was our brother. They wrote the most poignant things on Facebook about him because they considered him their brother. Connection means so much to all of us with rare disease. This is a symbol of connection, and I feel that connection in the room between you. And finally, that journey I mentioned from fear to hope to love. I use the word love because my son and so many others like him who I've come to know along the way, my son shared unconditional love with other people and for other people, which throughout his life was then reflected back to him. So as I look back upon the 26 years that I had with my son, I feel way more gratitude than sadness because of the rare gifts that he gave me and gave the world of perspective, of creativity, of resilience, connection, of compassion. So as I wrap up today, I do want to wish for all of you the same thing, that as you face these very real and challenging situations, medical challenges that come with HCU, that you can each discover for yourselves the rare gifts that you bring to the world as well. And in the short time I've come to know your community, you have a lot of gifts in this room today. Just a few people that I've met. I had the privilege of being together with my friend Alex Levine, Orange Drink. Everyone throws the word rock star around these days. Well, he's a real rock star. This is a guy with a gift of music, a very special, intelligent, and talented musician. I was privileged to be together with him at a rare disease event in San Diego at Travere offices, and it was a real privilege to get to know him. What a gift that Alex gives the world. I had the privilege, Danae introduced me to a young woman, one of your families, Gabby Lewis. We're going to visit the child care room and the siblings after this session. And I met with Gabby on Zoom a couple weeks ago, and then here in the hallway yesterday. This young woman has maturity and wisdom well beyond her years. She has the gift of wisdom as a very young person. Last night I came downstairs late to get a salad, to get some dinner, and I went to the bar and I sat at the bar here at the hotel, and a young man came up and ordered a ginger ale, and I got to know Adam and his guide dog Captain. And Adam and I got to know each other, and I came up to the room and said, "Patty, you got to hear about this guy." He showed me his slides. He's giving the gift of ministry, going around the world for his church ministry, the gift of ministry, doing really important work all the way around the world, traveling with his dog Captain around the world. An extraordinary young man. And we cooked up a plan. We didn't want to give Danae another medical crisis of her own, but we had joked a little bit about trading places because he's going to do the travel panel next, and I said, "Hey, I'll do the travel panel. You should be the keynote because your stuff is better than mine." So we had a really good time getting to know each other. And Danae herself, this is a new organization. It takes a lot of time and energy and work to do something like this. I never did in all these years. I help the people who have the courage and the strength to start and lead organizations like this. Danae is sharing that rare gift of leadership with all of you, and I'm so privileged that she found me, and I'm here to share what I know about this with all of you. So I'll finish up by thanking you for taking the time to listen to Dr. Al talk rather than Dr. Al, who usually listens. I hope that these lessons I've learned are of value and benefit to you. Patty and I will be here and I'll be happy to answer questions and meet you afterward. And again, I wish for each of you, as you face these very real challenges of HCU, that you're able to discover the rare gifts that you have, share them with the world. They'll come back to you. And I hope these lessons have been helpful. I wish you a wonderful conference, and I'm honored to have been here with you. Have a wonderful weekend.